Welcome to CrossTalk, your 7th Plymouth District edition with State Representative Alyson Sullivan. Of course, the 7th Plymouth District is Whitman. It's also Abington. I think a majority of East Bridgewater. Welcome back.
Thank you.
2020.
I know. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
I think this is the first one in 2020.
It's the very first one, so we get a chance to kind of revisit what the first half of your legislative session was like. If you could just quickly think of what were some of the top things you remember about the first year. It flew by.
It did. It very much flew by. You know, obviously the one thing that stands out to me is my swearing in process and going into the House chamber for the very first time and standing on that floor and looking around, seeing all the people that are there. That to me was something that will forever stay in my memory and in my heart, especially with my father sitting right there with me. And it's such an honor because I actually sit in his seat in the House chamber. I hold the seat that he held, the 7th Plymouth District, 24 years ago at this point, 25 years ago. So it's still surreal. It still doesn't feel real. I walk out sometimes and I pinch myself to see if I'm still dreaming or not. And then, our first legislative budget in April of last year, I got on the House floor and did my maiden speech in regards to the opioid crisis and domestic violence and sexual assault awareness. I've gotten on the House floor again to debate priorities that I think are important to the district and important to the Commonwealth. I also was able to sit on the different committees, the judiciary, mental health, and that was exciting to listen to different testimonies of people that would come in from all across the Commonwealth to voice their opinion on certain legislation that we were hearing. And then we had interns last summer. We were able to do a tour of the district, which was fun, and there was this impromptu ice cream tour that we did. Looking forward to the summer and having warm weather, maybe doing it again. And then the end of the year, that kind of fight the clock till December 31st and seeing what we could get through before the end of the year.
I know one of the things that you were prominent on and that you and I have had off-the-camera discussions about, and that is the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement legislation. Talk to me about that, because I know that was something that you really were helping to navigate.
Yep. So Senator Zaglio, she filed the legislation. I believe the number is Senate Bill 929, and it's to address the sexual harassment policies in the Commonwealth. And what we were trying to do in this legislative session was put forward a bill that would essentially no longer allow non-disclosure agreements in cases of sexual harassment. And by doing so, completely eliminating non-disclosure agreements in the state government. So if you're a state employee, you wouldn't be privy to a non-disclosure agreement, no matter what the causes were. We fought really, really hard, and unfortunately, I believe the bill is being sent to study. That was recommendations of the Judiciary Chair. I, of course, dissented against that recommendation. I believe that it's something we should be discussing and debating on the House and Senate floor. I think it's important legislation across the whole entire Commonwealth, let alone in state government when you're dealing with state funding. Taxpayer dollars, taxpayer money, people you elect, people who you elect put into positions, and having accountability and responsibility. This isn't to, bring light to victims. This is bring light to perpetrators. And what non-disclosure agreements essentially do is protect a perpetrator and the employer. It's a bargaining tool in settlement agreements when there's allegations of sexual harassment or any type of misuse within state government.
And it wasn't just a matter of you pushing. You've had discussions with other media outlets. You even had you had one or two high-profile people come and do press conferences about it.
Correct. Yeah, we had a press conference back in January in regards to non-disclosure agreements. We had Gretchen come in and some other high, speakers that came in to testify. We had the attorney that was part of the church sex abuse scandal, and also other state legislators that were, voicing their support for the legislation. It's important. I think people have this narrative that non-disclosures actually protect victims, and it doesn't. I came to the House floor in April, and I know it is not the same thing because my situation would not have been privy to a non-disclosure agreement, but I was still victimized. And I found power in my story and strength in my story. And I think other victims, they might initially not want to speak on it or talk about it, but going further in the healing process, I do believe that most victims find power in being able to talk and speak out about their story. And when you're barred by a non-disclosure agreement, it's troublesome. You know, the one person it is protecting is a perpetrator.
So when we also talk about your first budget, here we are around in the corner
Another budget.
to another budget. What did you learn from the first set of budget? Not only seeing the budget, the governor put it forth, then the House having an opportunity, House 2,
Yep.
and seeing it, go through the process. What did you learn from that, and what are you going to look to do this time around? Either the same or something different?
You know, what I did learn last year was it's a fast but slow process. You know, and I say it because, it comes up very quickly for the House, and we have our debates in April. So you need to really get your budget priorities and what you're going to support and what you're going to advocate for. So last year, it was such a new process to me that we were still kind of finding our way and our path. This year, we were able to send out emails to the local town officials in regards to budget priorities for the district. So I'm asking for their priorities here in Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater in regards to some local amendments. Granted, you're not going to guarantee all the local amendments, but you can advocate for every single one of them. I set up my, meeting with the House Ways and Means Chair in regards to my priorities going forward into the, FY21 at this point budget. So we are speaking on those priorities, and I am kind of getting ahead of the game in regards to local priorities. We're also digging through the budget, my legislative aide Curtis and I, in regards to statewide funding, certain aspects of what we have advocated for throughout last year and this year, and making sure there's funding that are going into those priorities. Having meetings with outside people in the sense of not just within the district, but statewide, that will essentially affect the district, but different priorities and looking into those and seeing where we can kind of step in where the governor has lacked a little bit in his budget.
It's worth noting that one of the prime topics when it comes to the budget is education, and knowing that the tail end of last year the Student Opportunity Act was enacted. Do you feel that it's going to be a different budget process because there's already a long-term plan in place that will tick up the per pupil amount and that will take care of certain districts?
I think as far as the Chapter 70 funding, it definitely will, I think, have a different impact this go around. It's a wait and see game at this point because it is new. However, the governor's budget, based on the Student Opportunity Act, has increased our funding to Chapter 70 across the district. Abington has seen an increase, Whitman-Hanson has seen an increase, and East Bridgewater has seen an increase. So, based on the priorities within the Student Opportunity Act, you will see an increase. But there also will be other towns and cities that's even larger increase than the 7th Plymouth District based on those priorities. But at the same time, we're advocating for an increase in local aid on top of what the governor proposed. So we're hoping that we get more money back to the district itself.
What else did you take away from the governor's speech? Usually when he does a State of the Commonwealth address, there's all kinds of little nuggets in there. Was there anything that kind of jumped out at you or you thought was interesting, or thought it would be something that would, benefit the district?
Well, I know that, he made a comment about his climate change and the priority being with the climate change. And I know the big talking point is the TCI and the increase on the gas tax. And, it is something that I'm definitely keeping a close eye on. I've spoken out against the TCI, the carbon tax, and then also the gas tax. We don't need that increase because the hardworking families here in the 7th Plymouth District will see that increase in the pumps. And unfortunately, we don't have great access to public transportation. We do have the commuter rail that goes through Whitman and Abington, but East Bridgewater has next to nothing in regards to public transportation. So a lot of those constituents in East Bridgewater rely on their vehicles to get around. And then you also look at the proposal for the ride share, increase on a fee there. And that's going to affect, I think, our district as well in a negative way. So I'm definitely keeping a close eye on those priorities of his, but I'm also thinking with the mindset of how it's going to affect the hardworking individuals here.
I know you have a great relationship with a lot of your colleagues who are down here on the South Shore, whether they're state senators or state representatives in a nearby districts. What's the general consensus in regards to transportation and the MBTA? Because it seems as though every time you turn around, there's a complaint, there's an issue, there's something that needs to be done about this thing called public transportation.
Right, right. So it's definitely on everyone's radar, I think, across the Commonwealth, not just here on the South Shore. We did have a meeting with the Ways and Means Chair as a South Shore delegation in regards to our public transportation. Here in Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater, it's a little different than on the coast as far as the South Shore, like Plymouth and those areas where they have access to the ferry. So there's definitely different needs, but we're all very much looking into different ways to improve the access to public transportation and what that looks like and how it will improve over the next several years and what we need to do to make sure that we have access here as well as even closer down to the Cape.
Well, do you think that there's going to be anything done in the next year or two in regards to infrastructure? And we're talking as far as roads and bridges. Have you heard anything up at the State House in regards when we're talking transportation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always talk about putting more money into our roads and infrastructure and increasing that accessibility into the city. There's also a lot of talk about taxes and fees, and those are not something that I necessarily would support because it's not going to hurt the people in Boston. It's not going to hurt the people that have access to all that public transportation. It's going to hurt, like I said, here in the 7th Plymouth District. So, it'd be great if they do fix some of the roads, especially some of the roads that are used almost as highways, such as Route 18. Mm-hmm. I know that's been a big project, and it started before I got in, and it's going to end hopefully in the next couple of years. But it is a big concern, especially for constituents that use Route 18 to get to Route 3. I mean, there's not very clear-cut routes to take from East Bridgewater, Whitman, or Abington to get to Boston. You're either going to go down 18 to Route 3, you're going to go down 14 to Brockton to 24. I mean, there's different routes, but each road, it takes about 30 minutes to even get to the highway. So that's a concern as well, especially where most of the jobs are in Boston and not the South Shore. So we're trying to attract businesses to the South Shore and to these communities, but also with that comes housing issues, comes parking issues. I mean, there's a whole array of issues that come along with increasing certain things here.
So you got another year ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So it's an election year.
It is.
What are your goals like for the coming year, the year that's ahead for you, other than seeking re-election? What are some of the things that you'll aim to work on and to try to do differently or tweak?
As far as priorities or within myself?
You as an elected official, and whether it's how you're going to tackle the budget as it's coming mm-hmm. up and represent your district, or your inner workings within the district itself.
So I think a priority has always been being in the district and getting out there and seeing people and hearing their issues. So, you and I have actually discussed potential opportunities to get into the district and do a little bit of a tour throughout the district and getting to know the businesses that are here and the hardworking families that run these businesses. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to highlight those people and to allow the community to know that they have such gold mines here, that they don't need to go into the city to have a great bite to eat, or they don't need to go into the city to Braintree to get a good piece of clothing type of thing. So I think we have great community resources here, and it's important to me to be able to see those places and talk to those people and those families. I also think it's important to be at the State House and hear exactly what's going on, having an ear there. That's why Curtis and I, we work so well together. If I'm in the district, he can be at the State House, or we'll both be in the district, we'll both be at the State House. I think as priorities in going into hopefully another year as a legislator, some of the priorities I'm going to be looking into is domestic violence and how we bring awareness to people that have restraining orders. I mean, a constant issue is that I hear in that community is, if they have known how many restraining orders their abuser had before even getting into that relationship, they may or may not have ever entered into that relationship. So we're looking at different priorities that we can go down in protecting future victims from ever becoming victimized. Another priority is hopefully getting the dangerousness bill out of committee and being able to vote that into legislation. I think it's an important legislation in regards to giving tools to prosecutors and the criminal justice system to protect victims again, and making sure that we're doing our best to protect those instead of the perpetrators. And then, I just think that like I said, the huge priority is just being in the district and meeting as many people. Maybe I'll be able to catch a soccer game or a basketball game, and being able to enjoy the residents here.
What are some of the things that you've been able to do over the past couple of months since the last time we chatted that you've been able to either attend or pop by? What some of the things, or maybe even discussions you've had during district hours?
So we've had, we've held district hours. We've been to the senior centers. We've been in the community. Even if it's in the grocery store, people come up to me and voice their concerns about certain things. Or if they give me a phone call, I've met with constituents in the library outside of office hours, because I know office hours aren't always ideal for every resident. So even if you can't come to office hours, I'm still willing to meet with you at a time that's convenient for you. So I've made that a priority as well. Curtis and I have had multiple meetings outside of our office hours. We've attended different events here in the district. We went to, I believe it was the Veterans Day was after I was here in Abington. They held a nice ceremony at the Abington High, high school, senior high school, I should say. And then, we did the Veterans Parade in, would have been, I believe it was West Bridgewater we were in, because it was the Tri-Town over there.
Yep.
Because the difficult part is Abington and Whitman does theirs together,
Yep.
but then East Bridgewater is with the Bridgewaters. So I attended Abington's last year, and so this year I went to East Bridgewater's parade. So I was able to go to that, and it was actually pretty cool because my sister is a veteran and she lives in Bridgewater, so she went to that parade. So I was able to see my sister, brother-in-law, my niece and nephew there. And then we had our holiday party in Whitman, which was a very successful party. All the kids seemed to enjoy. We had Santa as a special guest. Santa was great. My niece, I think, fell in love with him. Every time I looked over, he was holding her. But all the kids loved it, and the families that came out, and I was very happy to see everyone that came out, and they seemed to have a great time, so I can't wait to do that again next year. And that's pretty much, other than that, as far as district stuff, it's been pretty quiet.
You've mentioned Curtis a few times during our conversation here. How important is it that you have somebody who is merely an extension of yourself to kind of help coordinate and do things? Because you seem to work as in tandem as a great team.
Yes.
When it comes to not only doing your job up on Beacon Hill, but also working within working with the folks of the district.
Well, Curtis is pretty much the first one that a lot of people will hear, his voice. They'll call the office and they'll get Curtis. Most people do have my cell phone, and they don't mind calling me if they have a serious issue at hand, which I don't mind taking. But there are times where people will call the office and they'll get Curtis. And he is the first kind of line of fire that they hear from. So it's important that you have someone who you can trust and rely on. And every time I've been in the district, everybody has nothing but good things to say about Curtis. He's very responsive, he's organized, he's attentive, he's passionate, and he's caring. I think some people that call our office are people that are in crisis and need. So Curtis, being as empathetic as he is and sympathetic, he's a great resource to have for the district and for the office. I think it's important to have a team effort. And it's not necessarily that boss-employee mentality in our office. It's very much, we get this job done, we get it done together. And I think that's important because I wouldn't be able to do this job without a legislative aide. And, I joke with Curtis all the time. I said to him, you're setting that bar high if you ever, go forward with a career somewhere else in public government. So
sure, and anybody who follows him is going to need to meet
that standard.
Yeah.
And it's a great standard to have because he's a great kid and he enjoys working in the office. He enjoys the 7th Plymouth District. He jokes quite often that he's looking at houses here in the 7th Plymouth District or closer to. He loves being out here. And he finds different ways to kind of get to the district, so he gets excited that he doesn't have to use a GPS most of the time now. So.
You also, before the cameras rolled, were informing me that you have a new office.
I do, yes. We're on the second floor. We are right in Ways and Means, which is pretty cool. It's actually, it's kind of funny. So like I said before, how I sit in my father's seat, well, that was my father's old office as well. I did not know that when I asked to get that office. Rep. O'Connell from Taunton won her mayor election. She is now the mayor of Taunton.
Yep.
Congratulations to her.
Shauna,
yeah, and so when I knew that the office was going to be vacant, you've seen my office space in room 39.
Well, actually, let's be candid here. Is actually all the folks saw it when we did, myself and Ryan and our team went up there. We videotaped it. You kind of had like this little. You were with you were Tori.
Yep.
Who else were you with?
We were with Rep. Crocker and Kearney. So it was a great bunch in room 39. I loved room 39. It's a little bit nice to have some privacy. Curtis is very excited that we can shut a door when we're dealing with sensitive information instead of having to walk outside and discuss different constituent issues. Room 39 was great, and I know that everyone in room 39 kept things confidential because it's such an open work environment. But there were some times where there were people in visiting, and you wouldn't want to discuss certain personal information when it comes to constituent issues. So Curtis is enjoying the fact that he can close that door if needed. But we do always have the door open other than that.
Yeah, because what your previous space was like, it was like there were a series of cubicles.
Yeah.
It was, you would walk in, and yours was, I think it was immediately right there.
The first one.
And then you had to work your way back to...
A lot of people would mistake me for a receptionist. So it's kind of nice to be able to have that setback where you're not the first line of fire when you walk into an office space. Granted, our office is when you first walk into the doors is right there. But I love it. I'm so excited. And then when I found out from the leader, Minority Leader Jones, he said, "Did you know that's your father's old office?" And I said, "I had no idea." So I was excited to find out that, in a way, following in his footsteps.
What's interesting is you mentioned about former State Representative Shauna O'Connell, who is now Mayor O'Connell. Mm-hmm. We saw State Senator Vinnie DiMacedo.
I know.
Step aside as he got a job with Bridgewater State University. Yep. What's it been like to see leaders like that? I'm sure you've had a brush with them, you've talked with them, to see them kind of leave the House or to leave the legislature and see new people come in.
Well, we haven't seen anyone come in yet. So we
it's
will.
In the process.
It is in the process of that. So we will be able to see someone come in soon. I believe it's the end of March is their voting
That's
date.
for Senator. That's for Senator DiMacedo's seat, right?
Yep, and I believe Rep. O'Connell's seat as well. So
short order.
Yeah, I think hers.
You get the primary at the beginning of the month, and then the
31st. I think it's like 31st is the general for them.
Correct.
So it'll be interesting to see who gets elected and where. But seeing them leave, I was definitely sad to see them go. They both were very much role models to me and advisors when I went and needed advice on certain things. Vinnie has always been a straight shooter with me. My dad spoke very, very highly of him. He spoke very, very highly of my father. So when I came in, it was that sense of, respect based off of who they both know each other. But Vinnie always treated me as an equal and not as necessarily a freshman. He said, you got here just like everybody else got here. And, he did give me sound advice. And he said to me, this is something that can be done quickly, and there's other things that need to take some time. So, and he brought me right underneath his wing. We filed legislation in regards to Narcan together. And I was very excited when him and Senator Similty brought me on that legislation. Because PCO was involved as well. So we had the chief down in Plymouth and the chief in East Bridgewater working on it. So I was able to, file that, and hopefully that goes somewhere in the legislation process. But they were great role models, and I'm sad to see them go, but I'm excited to see their kind of new careers and where it brings them.
And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned individuals leaving. Two police chiefs. Scotty Benton just left from Whitman, and then Chief Allen.
I know.
Who you sat down. Didn't you do a show with him down in Diction Alley?
Yeah, we did. We actually, that was one of the first few times that I came out about my story about being a survivor, and I did it with my sister, who is the executive director of the Governor's Council for Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence. So it was a very moving segment, very emotional segment. But what Chief Allen does is great work, I think, in East Bridgewater. He will be missed very much. I actually saw it on Facebook, and I reached out to him, and he apologized. He was hoping that he was able to get to me before it became public, just to give me the heads up. I wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors. I think he'll do great wherever he ends up, but he will be truly missed here in East Bridgewater. He was a great asset, and he was someone that I could work very, very well with, very responsive. Anytime I had issues with constituents in East Bridgewater, he was ready and willing to sit down with them, especially around, the drug addiction and opioid use. So it was just, he's an important person to me. So I'm sad to see him go, but I think East Bridgewater will be in good hands. Who comes next?
We just got a couple of moments left here in the program. Anything you want to say in closing in regards to either the year that was, or moving forward, or maybe vital information for folks if they want to reach out to your office or find out about district hours?
Yeah, of course, we have the emails that are all public, social media that's all public, the website that it can be found at Alyson Sullivan for State Rep. And, we're gearing up for the re-election campaign, and excited to see what the next couple months have in store. We'll end the session in July, and then it'll be, focusing on re-election, which is crazy to think, because I feel like it was just yesterday I was sitting in this seat discussing with you my run for the seat, let alone being able to hold that position. So we're excited, and we'll be out in the district, and of course if anyone wants to help on the campaign or join the cause, reach out. We're more than happy to have volunteers. We do have the St. Patrick's Day Parade coming up in Abington, so we're always looking for volunteers to hand out candy. It's a huge parade.
It is.
We now know how much candy to get for this year. So we're excited for that.
You run out last year? Oh, pretty close.
We did. I had cousins that really were enjoying giving out a lot of candy
really?
at the beginning. And then we get to the end, we saw how many people were at the end. We felt bad. So we're going to make sure we're well prepared this year. It was my first time doing the St. Patrick's Day since 2013 when my dad ran. So I, completely forgot exactly how much candy you actually need, especially when everyone's giving it out.
Yeah, there's not really a filter. It's like they just...
They're tossing it, and of course you're not really tossing it because the kids are sitting right on the road. So you're going up and you're handing them, but you don't want to hand them just a piece. You hand them a
couple. Yeah.
So we had very generous. My cousins were very generous. They're teachers, so of course they're, to them it's like give them the whole bag out. So
why not?
Yeah. But
I want to thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to having you back on in a couple of months, and also coming and visiting.
Yes.
We already kind of teased that we'll come up and do another tour of your office and chat with you.
I would love it.
And of course, your counterpart who shares the school district, Rep. Cutler, as well.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Perfect.
Excellent. And
awesome.
We thank you very much for tuning into a program like this that features your state representative, Alyson Sullivan. If there's anything that you want to see on WHCA, info@WHCA.tv is your way. Until next time, have a great day.